Randy, my first question for you is what inspired you and Michael to develop your distinctive, how shall I put it, inside-out style of improvisation?
Both studied, I think, probably this has a lot to do with it, obviously growing up together in Philadelphia, which I talked about at the clinic, but studying with Dave Brecker and his concepts, his harmonic concepts, and just the way I write, which is kind of inside out in itself, that had something to do with it, trying to play over those chords, which some are not kind of are not what's the word, are rather unusual changes to try to play over. I think that had a probably big influence on both of us, just trying to negotiate what I would write, and then later what he would write. He started writing a little later in life, but I like a lot of tension, and so does he when he plays. So we like those kind of outside notes, and find a way to get back to the harmony and the form.
You were the tightest horn section ever, to my mind.
Well, we like to think so, but there's a few other good ones out there.
Did you practice together to develop that? Did you practice playing as a section?
Well,
like the two
well, we didn't practice together, but we played a lot together. I mean, the core of our little horn section was myself, Mike, and Sanborn, the real nucleus. Then occasionally Barry Rogers, the trombone player who was with Dreams, and we didn't necessarily practice together, but we did play a lot together in bands. And when Brecker Brothers first started, it was kind of like a rehearsal band where Dave was the third brother. It was before we thought of calling it Brecker Brothers, actually. So it was this kind of hidden third brother. And we would rehearse. I was writing a lot, and Don Grolnick was writing a lot, and we'd get together and rehearse once or twice a week. And I played with Dave in camp, in band camp in the early 60s, and his concept, and just the jazz funk aspect, was kind of similar to Mike's, not that they sounded alike, so I always wanted to hear them play together. So I wrote, that was kind of the nucleus of the thought of what became known as Brecker Brothers, was the three horn section having Mike and Sanborn. And Mike met Sanborn years later in New York. And whilst I had known him since he was about 15, and that became the nucleus of the Brecker Brothers horn section.
Was it very intuitive then, the actual, things like phrasing as a section?
Well, with the three of us, a lot of it was, particularly myself and my brother, who we grew up playing a lot of in the bathroom. We had a kind of a suite, which was divided by a bathroom where we grew up, and we would meet in the bathroom because we liked the echo. And we would play with records, and a lot of the stuff between the two of us, and Sanborn included, was somehow intuitive. Well, the first time I played with him was like having another brother when we were, like I said, 15 or 16. And it still is. Occasionally we get together and play. And then other times, we would talk about things, but the basic concept was there. Just that jazz rock, for lack of a better word, I don't know what you would call it now, fusion, but that was there amongst us at an early age. And other players didn't play like that. They did soon after we got our name out, though. Then we started seeing parts that had the little inflections. They tried to write out the little inflections that we would do in parts, or you'd see Brecker-esque, in the parts, and so it was kind of a funny situation.
It's funny to be the author of a new language, I suppose, which obviously...
Well, it was a minor language, but it was somewhat, especially in one of the horn sections. But then other horn sections really took it to the next step. I can think of the Jerry Hay, L.A. horn guys. They originally came out of Seawind, which was a band that had three horns. Jerry and I had the same trumpet teacher, Bill Adam, in college, and they were kind of weaned on skunk funk, and then they're about probably 10 years younger than I am, maybe not quite that much. So it was nice to have that kind of influence, but they really took it to another level. All those LA based records with Jerry Hay and Bill Reichenbach and Larry Williams, that was fantastic.
Yeah, absolutely. So what are you working on now, and what's next?
Well, I don't know. I'm just always writing. I have a record that's out with my brother. It was the last time we played together with the WDR Big Band, which arranged and conducted by Vince Mendoza. This is the longest title ever written, but the title of the record is some skunk funk, and it features Peter Erskine, Will Lee, and Jim Beard on keyboards. And I'm happy to say it just got nominated for a Grammy in the big band category. Vince just did a great job of rearranging some of my older tunes and some of my newer tunes and a couple of Mike's tunes. So that's been out for about 6 months. And I also have a record in the can, which I recorded. This is slightly a little different in Sao Paulo, Brazil, about 2 years ago. And I'm just getting to the point where the guy's finishing it. And it's like a really nice, I chose all the material, wrote a couple tunes, and he got the band together. And it's the first time I actually recorded. I've done a Brazilian record, usually mostly Americans and a couple African guys, but this was in the heart of Sao Paulo, so it's a really nice project. So hopefully that's coming out. In the back of my mind, I want to do a sextet project, utilizing, I'm not sure yet, but my wife's a wonderful saxophone player named Zanaru Mati. She's on the new John McLaughlin Industrial Zen record, so somehow utilizing her because we play together a lot. And I'm not sure, but a trombone, I think. And I have several tunes laying around that I want to finish.
Who's doing it for you now? Who would you who do you really rate, and what's it really exciting and interesting to listen to?
That's a good question. Well, trumpet-wise, beside this record, which is unique, the Till Brunner record, but Ingrid Jensen, Maria Schneider, I heard both of them recently. A lot of, it's kind of interesting. My wife, a lot of women in New York are really some really good new writers and players. Other trumpet player I really like, a young guy named Jeremy Pelt, who's on the scene. I play together with quite a lot, and of course Chris Potter and Dave Holland. They're kind of older now, but there's a lot of young musicians on the scene in New York who are just great. And in Europe, I just played with the HR Big Band in Germany. There's a young trumpet player there named Axel Schloss. I can't never say his name. Schlosser. Is that close? And he's a wonderful young player. It's amazing that just players all over the world that are great.
I think it's become a lot more global now, hasn't it?
I mean, so it's hard when you ask a question like this. It's hard for me to think because there's so many players. I go, like we talked about earlier, I go to Eastern Europe a lot, to Russia, Poland, Hungary. There are amazing players there, many of whose name I can't quite pronounce, but there's a lot going on there. There's a great band in Budapest called the Budapest Jazz Orchestra. That's also incredible. There's a trumpet player, and he's also, I can't think of his name right now, but whoever leads that, he's a trumpet player and he plays E-flat euphonium. Just incredible.
Well, I must check that out.
Tony Lakatos, another guy, you know him. He's a Hungarian, German. He lives in Germany, but he's a Hungarian gypsy. He's a tenor player. Another guy.